Hey Joe, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'd like to be the 10,363rd person to congratulate you.
Thank you, man.
Um, I'm sure it was an emotional moment and week, and just wondering, are you still kind of flying high from everything?
I am. I'm definitely worn out from a busy weekend. We brought all four of our kids out there, and we really wanted to make them a part of it because we felt like obviously they were a big part of the whole journey and the process to the Hall of Fame, and we wanted to make sure we were making those memories alongside them. But I will say that partying till well after midnight, which is already much later than I'm usually awake, and then having the kids wake you up asking for the screen time passcode on their iPad at like 6 a.m. Made for not a lot of sleep and a lot of tired eyes on the flight back from Phoenix yesterday.
Yeah, it'll be good training for the summer for you. Hey, were you aware of it when we saw you a couple weeks ago? And are you also worried that Annie's keeping other secrets from you?
um, I guess I try not to worry about things that are out of my control, but certainly Annie has proven to be a great secret holder. Um, I want to say the day I learned about it, the day that the knock came was January 27th, I think. Yep. Um, so yeah, it was a couple weeks ago. I can't remember when we met last, but
Yeah,
it was
25th,
really
right?
hard to kind of hold that secret in amongst all the people that I love and respect that were wishing me luck and asking me, had I heard anything yet or what I thought. And especially as it got closer and people were like, come on, you're probably in, right? And it was like, well, I feel like I have a pretty good case. And, there was even a couple times. I don't even remember exactly what it was, but it was kind of like, well, if I get in, this is what we're going to do on Friday, like trying to set up just media and things on Friday morning. And they were joking, like, well, what happens if you don't get in? You don't want to set all this stuff up if you don't get in. And I'm like, guys, I've known for a couple of weeks. This is not exactly a secret anymore.
Thanks, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Tom. Next up, Daryl Ryder.
Hey, Joe, first off, congratulations. Well deserved. Um, yeah, kind of off of that, how, I guess, overwhelming has it been the last couple of days? I imagine the phone calls, the text messages, the DMs have really blown up. Just what has been I guess, the reception and the outpouring of support that you've received since it was announced?
Yeah, it's been incredible. I've never had so many text messages in my inbox. Usually I'm the type of person that tries to be really responsive and get back to people within 24 hours. That's kind of what I try to do is as long as I have my phone or I'm, not hunting in the woods, and then I don't want to talk to anybody. But I usually try to get back to everybody. But the first night I had over 300 messages when I started responding. And then by the time I spent like 2.5 hours responding, I was back over 300. And then I realized I was missing like important things like, oh, here's your tickets for the Super Bowl. This is what time you have to be there for the shuttle tomorrow. And then I realized, okay, I really need to prioritize rather than just going in order. I need to like kind of sift through these messages and find out, all right, what are the things that I have to know for tomorrow? And then try to get back to those and then get back to everybody else, hopefully by the time I get back to Wisconsin. So it's certainly been a little bit overwhelming emotionally at times, walking up onto the stage Friday afternoon for the Merlin Olsen luncheon when they announce us as Hall of Famers. And there's like 70 Hall of Famers that are back and they're all in their gold jackets and they announce your name. They show the knock video. And all of a sudden you see, 80 legends of the game. Many of the faces that were guys that you cheered for and that you idolized as a kid, they're standing up and they're clapping for you. And you have to walk this little walk up onto the stage and you get asked a question. Remember my knees just crumbling and going weak. And I was just so overwhelmed with emotion in that moment that I lost like dexterity and the ability to think of what I was trying to say. And I probably didn't say anything that made any sense in that moment, but it's one of many overwhelming emotional moments that I had in the last week.
You've had so many teammates over the years. I know we joke about the quarterback thing often. I think I saw you spend some time with Colt McCoy recently.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of curious, because some of those guys, they just weren't here long enough for you really to
Yeah.
have any type of a meaningful relationship with them. But I am kind of curious, how many of those guys have you kept in touch with over the years, and how many of reached out to congratulate you and thank you for keeping their blind side clean.
Sure. Yeah, there's actually been a ton of them that have reached out since the announcement happened on Thursday night. And I think that's one of the cool parts of being inducted to the Hall of Fame is you start hearing from a lot of guys that maybe you haven't heard from in a while. And it triggers a lot of cool memories from your time together. Maybe it wasn't always on the field on Sundays with a win, but it was memories in the locker room or the weight room, or maybe a dinner that you went to with them and their wife. Or like with me and Colt, we became such good friends because we're both kind of country boys, and we'd spend the off season hunting and fishing together. And then our wives became good friends. And him being the backup quarterback for the Cardinals this season, he was like a mile down the road from where we had our rental house last weekend. And so my oldest daughter, Logan, turned 10 on Friday, and they threw a birthday party for her because we both have 4 kids that are pretty similar in age. So it was great having the opportunity to share my Hall of Fame moment with not only my kids and my wife and my family, but a lot of people that were there in Arizona that I played with, but also people that were just watching back home and being able to make those connections and have them reach out and kind of talk to them and just catch up with a lot of those guys and remember some of the more positive memories that we had together as teammates.
Thank you, Daryl. Let's go to Nate Ulrich.
Hey, Joe, congratulations again. Of all those messages, hundreds and hundreds, is there anything that surprised you? Anybody who reached out that, off the top of your head was surprising to you or a little more memorable for any reason?
I would say that, I haven't talked to Peyton Manning in a few years, probably since I retired or maybe shortly after. And he sent the congratulations message, and, we kind of went back and forth a little bit, which was kind of cool. Just because I think I told the poop story a bunch of times in the last couple of weeks before I got inducted. That was kind of funny when he reached out, because then I thought of the story again.
Yeah. Hey, and I know you've talked for years about Walter Jones, how much you had admired his game, how much you'd studied him. Looking back at it, though, the way your careers lined up, you would have only played in one game in the NFL together, your rookie season. Seattle came to Cleveland. Did you actually have interaction and talk to Walter Jones before, or was the knock kind of really the most you guys had spent together?
Yeah, the knock was really the most we've ever spent together. I remember him being on the field when Seattle came to Cleveland, and actually, I think the equipment managers, Brad Mellon, he had spent a bunch of time in Seattle, so he knew Big Walt. And I think he knew that I had a man crush on him, and the way he played, he was kind of my idol. And I remember when I got to the stadium before we played the Seahawks as a rookie, they had printed out a picture of Walter Jones and they put it in my locker. And I can't remember if he wrote something on it pretending to be like Walter or if it was just a picture. But I never really had a chance to get to meet him other than just saying hi briefly on the field until he came to the house. And then pretty soon my 4-year-old daughter's reading him bedtime stories and wanting to give him some of her stuffed animals.
Thanks, Nate. Jeff Shadell, go ahead.
Hey, how you doing, Joe? I was wondering, what are your goals now? You said when you were drafted here, start Pro Bowl, and now you have the Hall of Fame. So what are your goals now?
I would say first and foremost, I want to be a great father, a great husband, and a great friend to all the people in my life. That's first and foremost. And then I think after that, just trying to find purpose in life, trying to be a servant for others, the people in my life that had a big impact on me being where I am right now as a Hall of Fame inductee. And then trying to find a way to have some successes, some wins in life in the business world. And more importantly, though, more than anything, just be present with my family and my friends as much as possible. It's one of those things that you have to put to the side a lot when you are focused on being a player, to be the best version of yourself for your teammates. And then you just want to flip those priorities and make sure you can be around as much as you can. And I told somebody this off season. One a fellow NFL player, we were hanging out and we were talking about just being a father and retiring and things like that. And I said, you know, I think I've thought about it a lot because sometimes I'm a deep thinker and sometimes too much, but I feel like I said the scoreboard in fatherhood is a 1-to-1 ratio of time spent with your kids. Like there's no curve. There's no grading on a curve. Like, oh, well, you were here for this, but not that. Like, because you never know when those special moments are going to be with your kids that they remember. Like I had my kids at the Super Bowl in a suite for the Hall of Fame this past weekend. They probably won't remember 1 second of it. But you know what? If I go pick them up from school and we drive home and all of a sudden something comes up and we have a meaningful conversation, that might be something they remember the rest of their life. So for me, just being there as much as I possibly can, because you never know when those moments are going to happen.
Yeah, I'm with you on that because I have 3 kids and now 4 grandchildren. How have you made that transition, Joe, from playing, and you're still connected, of course, with NFL Network and all, but you've made a transition smoother, it seems, than some veterans. How have you done that?
I think what I did when I was playing was try to really watch my teammates and my friends that went through this process when they were a little bit older than me and they decided to retire and they stepped away, and trying to learn from their experience, you know, and then talk to them and figure out what were the challenges, what were the things that were easy, and if there was any strategies that helped them kind of deal with that transition. Because I don't care who you are, I don't care how much success or not success you had in the NFL. When you're done playing, you lose your identity as a football player, and you're doing it for a lot of people in their late 20s or early 30s, and you're not a football player anymore. Most people don't lose that identity of who they were as a working person until they're 60s and 70-year-old, and everybody else in their peer group is doing that at that time. But I think one thing that I have learned just watching people is you got to find a purpose. You got to find a passion outside of, you know, just friends and family. Because if you think that you're just going to not do things and that's going to give you happiness, like, oh, I'm going to just not work out and not go to meetings and not go to practice. And if that's going to make you happy, maybe for a few months, but like leisure time and not working hard, like that only gives you a little bit of satisfaction. And then eventually you have to find purpose and direction and something that gets you out of bed every day.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Scott Petrick has our next question.
Hey, Joe, besides the Walter Jones knock, like what were some of the most memorable encounters you had being in that Hall of Fame circle for the first time?
I think meeting a lot of the other offensive tackles that were in the Hall of Fame. I've known Anthony Munoz for a while, but just seeing him again, I'd never met Orlando Pace. He was a guy who was one of my heroes growing up. So seeing him at the Super Bowl was awesome. Got to take a picture with him and just chat a little bit. And it's one of those things that's really cool is once you become a Hall of Famer, even though I don't have the gold jacket yet, all those guys knew that I was becoming part of that family. And all of a sudden, like, for them, they kind of see you a little bit more as a peer and they want to accept you in and they want to find out more about your life and who you are and what makes you tick. So that was really, really awesome having that opportunity to just spend time with the greats that came before you.
And then did you do the bust? I know you sat for the jacket and the ring and stuff. So like,
Yep.
What was that whole experience like? Did it make it feel, I guess, more real that you were going through that process? It
certainly did make it feel real. And I think the bust measurements was probably the moment of the measurement, what they call it, sizing Saturday, that made it the most real, because you sit with the sculptor, who's a world famous sculptor who does a lot of the busts, and he's been doing them for a while, and he's measuring, like, you know, every little nose hair that you got and the giant ears I got. And he's like, oh man, don't think we've had a measurement that size before. But he's taking pictures, and then you get a chance to look at some of the work that he's done. And as kind of like a little bit of a history nerd, he's the first master sculptor that I ever met. And so I was really interested if he'd studied the works of like Da Vinci and all the great sculptors from Europe. And like, I just was like picking his brain about, hey, have you ever been to Florence? Have you been to Rome? Like, what's the most amazing sculpture that you've ever seen? And like, how do they give you perspective on like your own work? And he probably thought I was a pretty big nerd for asking all these questions, but I was really fascinated. And the process is they take your measurements, they take your pictures of your face, and then in April, they'll have like a clay mold somewhat carved out, and then you fly to his studio in Utah and you sit there for, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours, and then he kind of finishes the details and make sure that you're happy with what he's done. And then they take that, and I think they move that into bronze somehow.
Thank you, Scott. Mary Kay Cabot, you're up.
Yeah, Joe, just wondering, have you decided yet who will present you on your induction day? And if so, would you be willing to share that with us?
Yeah. One of the misses from this past weekend is I really wanted to spend some time talking to the other Hall of Famers and ask them about who did you decide to be your presenter and why? And I forgot because I got a little bit sidetracked. I was sort of in awe of a lot of these guys. And so I haven't made a decision, and I haven't really even spent enough time thinking about it to have narrowed it down. So that's definitely on my to-do list.
Do you have a lot of really great candidates? I'm guessing that you have mulled over a number of people who could do that for you.
Yeah, it's crazy, Mary Kay. I haven't really thought about it all that much. And I know for some guys, the few guys that I've talked to about it, it was really obvious because they had one person that was in their life, their entire NFL career, whether it be like an owner or a coach or like sometimes a teammate or a friend. And it was sort of a no-brainer for them. But for a guy that had 9 offensive coordinators and 2 owners and 6 head coaches and like a revolving door of quarterbacks, I've had a lot of people that have touched my life and have been a huge part of this journey for me. But so I think that makes it a little challenging to kind of narrow it down and figure out who's that one person that I want to make sure is presenting me and that I would be the most excited about having up on stage.
Maybe all 20 quarterbacks could each say one sentence.
Well, I think somebody told me that Billy Manziel would be a great candidate because certainly the people in Cleveland would love to hear from him.
Sure. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Mary Kay. Ashley Bastock, go ahead.
Hey, Joe, congratulations. Nice to meet you over Zoom. I just wanted to ask, obviously, this has probably been in the back of your mind for years. I just wonder when the knock actually came and you find out you're going in, were the emotions like what you expected they would be for you? Or was it something that was, much more overwhelming or emotional than you could have imagined before it actually happened?
It was a lot more emotional and overwhelming than I expected because the knock caught me off guard. I wasn't prepared at all. I assumed wrongly that the knock would come pretty close to the Super Bowl because I figured that they wanted to keep the window of time between telling guys and the actual announcement as short as possible so that it doesn't leak out. And so my wife did a great job kind of setting us up, and my kids didn't know, I didn't know. And so when it happened, it caught me off guard. And I'm glad it happened like that, because I think if they would have done it in the old style where they bring you to the Super Bowl, they put you in a hotel room and you're sitting there, like I felt comfortable with my resume. I know some guys talk about how nerve-wracking it is and things like that, but like I felt good about what I had done as an NFL player to be eligible for the Hall of Fame. Now, you never know for sure, like what's going to happen. But I think if you would have said, hey, within the next 4 hours, they're going to tell you, I probably wouldn't have been as excited or as emotional. But the fact that I was caught off guard, Walter Jones was standing at my door and my kids were there and saw him first because they thought that their friends were at the door. And then they come running back into the kitchen where my wife and I were standing. And my son tells me, Daddy, we made it. And instantly it just knocked me off my feet emotionally to know that like my wildest dreams of playing football and getting into the NFL were never this great. And the fact that my idol told my son, who told me the great news, just made it even better than I could have ever scripted.
And I know that video the Browns tweeted out that I think your wife took of, and you can hear your son's excitement and saying, you made it. I mean, fans have just latched onto that so much, but for you, how cool was that to see your kids get that excited about that moment?
That was really cool. I mean, I think I've seen it like 100 times and I still get emotional. And I don't know, like anybody who's a parent, they understand, especially now that I'm retired and I spent so much time with them. It's like, like for them to have emotion and excitement makes it so much more special for me. because you try to tell them stuff all day long and they don't listen to anything. And like, you're like, hey, we're going to go back to Cleveland and they're going to announce Daddy in the Legends Club. That's really cool. And they're like, yeah, whatever, Dad. And then I'm like, all right, got to find something that's cool. Hey, I'm on the Titan games with The Rock. You know, Maui, you guys love that show. They're like, yeah, we don't care. And then all of a sudden, like there was something they get excited about. I think that as a parent, like kind of made it a little bit overwhelming.
Thank you, Ashley. That'll do it for our questions today. Joe, appreciate you taking the time to speak with our media. Congratulations again on being in the class of 2023 for the Hall of Fame. And as always, thank you for everything you've done and continue to do for the Cleveland Browns and, of course, the Northeast Ohio community.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you taking a little bit of time with me. And I would be improper if I didn't say it was Tony Grossi who mentioned that I should have Billy Manziel as my presenter on Friday. He told me that. So shout out to Tony. I know he's probably on the golf course in Arizona still. So, but thanks anyways, guys. I will hope to see you guys soon.